Welcome back, MBL fans, for week 6 of the preview and pick'ems. I'm your host, Lot of Toast, and I'm with Jason, as always.
What a lovely intro you just had there, Toast.
Thank you. So, last week, no one got 6-0. Only I can get a 6-0. But I am no longer the leader. I am the joint leader, unfortunately. It's sad, isn't it, Jason? It's sad, I know. Thank you.
And it kind of makes me a little happy that you've been brought down to a more reasonable level because, you know, you had a good week. You had as good a week as I did, but I didn't want you thinking that you were, like, actually above everybody else. So now you're back in your place. Still in first, which I can respect, but you've got wits there. Actually, no, you both have the same locks, so you guys are, like, tied.
Thank you. Unfortunately, Ben didn't do so hot last week. He got his lock right, but everything else he didn't get right.
I didn't realize that he went 1-5. That's unfortunate.
A bit crazy. Nothing else really stands out to me. So did you want to just move on to the first match?
Yeah, that sounds good.
So we have Team Juice versus Team Subs. So Team Juice, we have Harvey, Wits, you, Jason, Ave, Cabu, Ben, and not the fans. And for Subs, it's Juan, me, Tailwind, and the fans, as I just said.
So I actually like this because I expected it to be more lopsided because Subs has been kind of on not a skid by any means. It's been like 2 losses in a row, but still they haven't been doing as well.
Well, they're last place.
Yeah, then they're in last place. And Juice, same record, but like their games have been, I think, a lot closer generally. So I expected a lot more Juice. So even though I picked Team Juice, I'm happy to see that there is a fair amount of Subs, though I don't necessarily know why. Why don't you tell me, Toast, old friend, why they're going to win?
You remember me saying last week, I said I can see Team Juice winning if they wasn't so tilted. You know what I mean? They're kind of like, not salty, I would say, but they're kind of feeling the loss ratio. You know what I mean?
Subs, you mean?
No, Juice.
Oh, Team Juice. Oh, yeah.
Said Team Juice could possibly win if they didn't have that thing, and I felt like they kind of did. And now I've been watching a lot of Team Sub stuff recently, and you can tell, even though they're last, they're still having really good fun with this. So they can tell like they're still in it to like try and get wins. They don't care how they go, but they're still going to try and win. Sometimes I'll go, okay, you have to. They're performing really well, so they're going to do well. I feel like this is a case of they're still in it. They just want to try and improve their record, which I think is a bigger fact than just saying they have the matchup. Sometimes mind frame is way more important, I feel.
Yeah, and I think that there's definitely something to that, but I don't know if this is the kind of matchup. Like maybe last week I think was the matchup where mind frame mattered more, just because I don't know. I think Team Juice has a really strong, matchup against Team Subs here. Pokemon like Aegislash does phenomenally. That really kind of walls Mega Lucario. It helps against Clefable. It helps against Mew. It helps against fighting types in Hitmontop. It is immune to poison from Crobat, resists flying. And the only things it really has to worry about are the few things you see on the bottom row, which you usually only really see 1, maybe 2 of, which are Shiftry, Seismitoad, and Typhlosion. And even then, I think Team Juice has all the tools they need to get rid of those 3 Pokemon fairly easily in their higher tier picks, which I think gives them a slight edge.
And you just listed for me why I think they will win. Like easily, I can see a Sunny Day coming out. Chlorophyll with Shiftry, that means you're going to be outspeeding everything, so that's really nice. And then with Typhlosion, just either slapping on a Choice Scarf, Choice Specs in the sun with an Eruption. You have access to Solar Beam for the things like the Volcanion and the Crocodile, so you can easily take out those big threats. And then something like, as I said, Eruption or a Heat Wave for spread damage can just do so much damage to everything else in the sun. It's crazy. And I think
that is definitely an option, and actually one that I hadn't considered. But I think that, yeah, they could set up the Sunny Day and like run amok with Chlorophyll, Shiftry, but at the same time, Team Juice could just lead with their Tornadus, set up Tailwind, and like match the same speed, or they could just switch. Like, I think they just have a lot more leverage in that sense. Resistances to these attacks, like yeah, Aegislash is threatened, but they could just switch in. And I think that Team Subs would have to predict those switches if they want to take an advantage off those and get something going before things like the sun runs out, or before they get KO'd by the other Pokemon that they're not targeting. And I don't know. I just think that Team Juice has an easier time starting from the lead. that makes sense.
Yeah, that's fair enough. So you want to move to the next game, yeah?
Yeah, that sounds good.
So we've got Team Flawless versus Mythical, and it's a clean sweep across the board for Team Flawless. I've locked it, Ben's locked it, as well as everyone else just believing in Team Flawless this week.
Yeah, unfortunately, this isn't like last week where Team Mythical, you know, got a lot of love and got their first win, which congrats to them for that. But it was a bit of different competition. I think Team Flawless, they do have a 2-3 record, but their team is a lot scarier. They've actually been playing really close. I mean, if you think about it, remember that last week was the week of hacks for almost like everyone. And while I don't know if I could say how much Team Flawless versus Team Drinking Birds, they were very incredibly close. It literally just came down to how many speed EVs they had on their Pokemon. And so, like, yeah, they have a losing record, but they could have just as easily had a winning record with like a couple more points of speed. So I think that the odds that Mythical are going to win this week are, we all kind of agree they're a little understandably low.
Team Mythical's strategy has also been kind of similar every week, like bring in Medicham, fake out, set up, do your like speed control, and then proceed to try and win from there. And Team Flawless has the best answers to speed control. They have Icy Wind, Tailwind, Trick Room. They have literally every form of speed control possible. We've seen Sticky Webs, we've seen String Shot, we've seen nearly everything, which I think is great. And as you said, with the hacks, I think the Team Flawless hacks was the most important hacks last week. That's the one where it mattered the most.
I don't know about that.
I feel like here's a match where it mattered the most, and especially if they bring their game faces, it's going to be an easy win, I think, anyway. This
week for them? Yeah, I think so. I mean, just like, and like, look at the Pokemon that they have. And again, we're always like talking about answers, but
what answers to Mamoswine do they have?
Brain Punch from Medicham. And
Medicham is the only thing that doesn't get hit super effectively from it, and Cresselia.
Yeah.
And like obviously Rabombi, but they haven't bought Rabombi yet, so I'm going to stop talking about it as if it could be an answer. And if so, I don't see it being an answer here because it's not touching a Magearna and it's definitely not touching an Infernape.
Right. So yeah, I think Mamoswine has a great matchup here. I think that Team Mythical's best chance to win this game is by getting up Trick Room, because Team Flawless's Trick Room setter is Hoopa Unbound, which I really don't think they're going to, like, they haven't really used Trick Room with it, and I don't see that happening. They have much better answers in terms of like going fast with Tailwind or just slowing their opponents down in various ways. And so, okay, Team Mythical, knowing that, brings Cresselia to try and set up the Trick Room, but you have Hoopa Unbound. I don't even think it really needs, I mean, it might need a Z move to guarantee a knockout, but it's going to hit Cresselia super hard, not get hit hard by much in turn, and Team Mythical will really need to rely on Cresselia's partner to counter Hoopa, and that's not necessarily always going to be an option, because unless you tech a random HP bug, which, yeah, sure, you could do that, but it's like you're wasting a move slot, or unless you bring Rabombi, which, like you said, I don't think I see that happening.
Actually, now I think about it, I can see it coming. If you do like a Fairium Z, you're hitting Salamence, you're hitting Hoopa, most importantly, you're hitting Serena, and you could like tech you can tech like a random HP fire for Parasect just in case. So you can make an argument for it, but if they do bring Rabombi, it kind of really has to be Fairium Z, I'd imagine.
I think not Chandelure, sorry. I was going to say, I think Magearna has an okay matchup.
It's pretty good.
If only just because easy answers to everything that I think Mythical can use to counter it. I think, like, yeah, you've got Garchomp as a really strong counter to Magearna, but at the same time, like, Mamoswine can do crazy damage to that with, I mean, with even just an Ice Shard. You've got Salamence there with the Dragon typing. It's just like, oh no, there's just too much on Team Flawless's team that'll, I think, stop what Team Mythical is going to want to do. And even like some of the more creative uses that Team Mythical has come up with for some of their other Pokemon, I just don't see that being effective here. I don't really see Guzzlord doing a whole lot. I don't see Glalie doing a whole lot. I think it's a hard week for them.
Yeah. And as you said, like, it's not so much as Magearna, like, Garchomp's a hard counter. It's very easy to live like an Earthquake, so they're probably going to have to run Tech Rage on it. And if you don't kill, it's easy just killing you back.
And they have flying switch-ins, I mean, or they have ground resist switch-ins. And,
yeah,
you know, same thing with Chandelure's option to go for fire. And we've seen in the past that Team Flawless has run I think it's just been Akaberry. I don't think they've run Shaka yet, but I mean, they have either of those options. So
exactly. So do you want to move to the next match?
Yeah, let's get the next one. It's Team Cyberbaz versus Team Dreamball. My personal pick or game of the week, despite the fact that only Harvey, Kabu, and
that's it.
Okay, only 2 people picked Team Cyberbaz. The rest of us picked Dreamball, but all the same, this is going to be an insane match. You have world champion and a top 4 finisher against 2 also. I mean, Baz got top 8 last year. Aaron was commentating that last year at Worlds, but he's also one of the most decorated VGC players in the world. I believe him and Wolf currently hold the record for most regional wins in at least North America with 5 each. So like this is just going to be like a VGC masterclass game right here, which as the token, well, not token, but just like the stereotypical, oh my God, VGC guy, that's really exciting to me.
And their matchup is, I didn't think it was going to be this close. I was very close to picking Cyberbaz, but I haven't really picked Dreamball, and I thought, I prefer their chances with this. But the matchup is really, I know we say this near enough back and forth with a lot of stuff, but I like the matchup. I favour Dreamballs, but I think it's going to be fun. It's a very good game to showcase techs.
Yeah.
For each other. And Dreamball has shown a lot of cool techs, and I think this is the week where Cyberbaz are going to whip out some really spicy stuff for us to see.
I think you kind of saw it a little bit last week with the Regigiga. Saw them experimenting a little bit more. It didn't quite work out the way they wanted it to, but it is showing a willingness to go away from their kind of standard game plan, which is setting up with a Pokemon and then trying to sweep. I just think that Team Dreamball has demonstrated more creativity in the past, and that they're going to be able to leverage the experimentation they've had with their team better than Team Cyberbaz will. Like, they know what has worked, they know what hasn't worked, and I just think that at the same time, they're also really familiar with each other as players. That kind of goes both ways, but you know, I just think Team Dreamball is going to have a slight edge over Team Cyberbaz in this one.
Totally agree. With Heatran, Zapdos, Zygarde, and even Mega Absol. Mega Absol has a really cool time here. It deals with a lot on the field. It doesn't really want to take much from a Azumarill or a Mach Punch from a Breloom, but it's just matters if you can take them out or divert it. Like, Mega Absol's special attack stat is ridiculous, and so is this attack stat. It literally hits like a truck, which I think is a shame that they haven't brought it yet, but I can very easily see them making a case to bring it this week.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I mean, because like you mentioned that the Azumarill and then the Breloom, and you got to worry about Bug Buzz from Volcarona.
It's just about protecting it correctly, and I think they have the more than enough tools to do that. Or if not, bring it in late game when everything is taken out.
Mop up, yeah. As far as me, what I'm kind of excited for is the switch game that I'm expecting from this. You have Raichu with the Lightning Rod is going to do a really good job of shutting down the Zapdos, and then you have the Heatran, which is going to do a really good job of shutting down the Volcarona, as well as a couple other options. But some key things that I think I want to point out: we've seen in the past that Raichu has been really good with 4 times super effective hidden power moves. I think that could certainly be a factor. Zygarde seems like a really easy counter to Raichu, right? But you know, an HP Ice is going to be very problematic for Zygarde unless it is able to get up a Dragon Dance. But then at the same time, you have Heatran really only scared by Azumarill, maybe Nidoqueen. I mean, I just think that Heatran has a really good time here, is going to want to switch in a lot. Tapu Fini is also in a fairly good position, aside from maybe Raichu, probably Breloom too, I guess. But it's a really close matchup the more that I look at it.
Quickly talking about Tapu Fini, what I'd really like to see with Zygarde is Camouflage. So if you use it without a terrain, you just become a normal type. So if they bring something like a random hidden power ice, no go fam. Like, you're not hitting me at all. I'm just a normal type. But then obviously if you do it in misty terrain, you become a fairy type, which could also be really cool. Obviously you don't really want to take the sludge bombs, but you can tailor it to what's around on the field, which I think would be a really cool way, because a lot of win conditions they've had Team Dreamball is the Zygarde. So if they could do that and maybe switch it up, and that would just totally tilt, I would think, Cyberbaz.
I think actually that could be really interesting. The only thing that you really have to answer a fairy type Zygarde on Team Cyberbass is the Nidoqueen, and that's going to get hit super effectively by the 1,000 arrows. Sure, it's not stab at that point, but still going to be hitting plenty hard. And on the physical side, which I believe Nidoqueen is slightly weaker on. So yeah, that actually I think is a very interesting tech that I would not put past Team Dream Ball. But I think what would be a really interesting matchup would be if both teams decide to go the setup route, which they both have done a lot in the past. And it's really going to just be a lot of switching, a lot of using fake out and redirection and things to try and enable that. And whoever, it'll be interesting to see who gets the edge and starts steamrolling the other player, or if they both lose their sweepers early and then are forced to kind of adapt and just slug it out in a more traditional sense.
Yeah, so before we start repeating ourselves, we'll go to the next match. So then we have Team Not Schooled versus Drinking Birds, which is another close match, which I like. So we got Harvey, Tailwind, Ave, Kabu, and the fans going for Not Schooled. And we got Juan, Wit, me, you with your lock, and Ben with Team Drinking Birds.
I'm so nervous to make this my lock, I'm not gonna lie, but my logic is simply that, I mean, there were probably some easier picks, but my logic is just like Team Not Scald's luck has to run out eventually, at least in some sense. And I feel like every time we talk about this and we say, oh man, they sure got lucky, it seems like it invalidates the prep and skill that Joey and Envy bring to all of their games, which isn't the case. Like
last week wasn't the case of the double protect. Like that wasn't their win condition. Team We Disney had win conditions before that easily, where they could have steamrolled. They just misplayed from there, and the double protect sealed them the win. So it's not the case of like, oh, they got so lucky. Yeah, it is lucky. It's a 30% chance, but as their namesake, Not Schooled, like sometimes a win comes down to a 30%, like a flinch with what we saw with Team Jamie with the Iron Head, or with schools that we've seen multiple other battles in other stuff in other places. So sometimes you do have to just risk the 30%, which I don't think is too bad in saying.
No, I don't think so. And I guess my main point was less that I think that like their luck has to run out, but more that like this is a team that very often does kind of have the dice roll in their favor this season. And so picking their opponent as my lock to win for sure, like this is the one that I'm like, they're for sure going to win, is nervous because anything could happen in a matchup against Not Scald, as they've demonstrated. On top of that, they're just a really strong team in both a coaching sense and a Pokemon sense. And speaking of Pokemon, let's look at some of the key players in this matchup. Toast, who do you got as your key players?
Okay, so easily I can see 4 Mons that will get Drinking Birds. Well, I'm not saying get and win, but have near perfect coverage. I know I keep on saying about Oricorio, but in between Pheromosa, Oricorio, Heliolisk that also hasn't come, and Blastoise, I can see near perfect coverage for. Pheromosa with obviously the bug and fighting, so you can hit stuff like the Malamar, you can even hit stuff, even though it's going to have Intimidate, you might want to run special, you can hit Arcanine really well. Oricorio is going to be really nice here for stuff like the Buzzwole and the Credilli, and there's Blastoise to round it out, just having stuff like the Ice Beams and the Scalds just on deck prepared. I think in between them 4, if they support them well enough, it's going to be really good. And then obviously you have stuff like Landorus that you can have in the back, Mega Venusaur, Ninetales, just like to gimp the Suicune even more. It's just, they have such a good matchup in my eyes against them. And Metagross as well, I can easily see coming, because Arcanine, if they bring a supportive set, is really not doing much to a Metagross. We see like it's pseudo legendary, so it has really good base stats. It's really bulky. Weakness policy I can easily see coming. If not Ockerberry, if not Shuckerberry, I just easily see him winning that way.
I think what's so funny about that is that those aren't exactly the win conditions that I saw in Team Drinking Birds, which just convinces me that they just have a really good matchup here. I like the Sun option, and for some similar reasons, like Heliolisk, for example, I think has a really good time here in hitting the Celesteela and hitting the Suicune and being able to use even its normal typing to hit a lot of other things on the field for super effective damage. I agree that I think Pheromosa is going to be really huge here in this game. It's just a really safe, good answer to Garchomp, because you can just drop it in, threaten the Ice Beam, force protects, maneuver around it. It's just a good option. I think Intimidate is huge here. Team Not Scald has, especially in the early game, really relied on their physical attackers. I mean, just last week we saw them catch We Disney with the Wild Charge, which we've seen them Not Scald bring multiple times. So having something that you can switch in on that to maybe protect their Blastoise will be really nice. Landorus will be able to come in, be immune to that, and drop an Intimidate. And really the only way to punish it is if Team Not Scald predicts the switch in and goes for something like an Ice Beam into that slot. So I think that that's a really good option for them.
There's not really much to say else about this matchup here. We're a bit one-sided against it. So the next match is Team Jamie versus Team Blue Hunnets, and this is a universal Team Jamie.
Playing better and better, and I think that they're finally starting to have things kind of go their way a little bit more. Obviously, you could say what you will about against the flinches. I certainly railed against them last week since I picked Team Leaky, but all the same, they've really been clicking as a team, or not as a team, but like in terms of team building and in making the right plays. And I think that Team Blue Hunnets, while they did have a good show against Cyberbaz last week, a lot of it, I think, in that case was due to things like the paralysis and flinches and some RNG elements. So I'm not quite as confident in their ability to beat Team Jamie without that similar kind of situation happening again.
I feel exactly the same, but it's a different reason that I'm not too. I support Team Blue Hunters as much as I can. I really want them to do well, but what made me a bit more skeptical with choosing them this week is their prep, which even Team Cyberbaz admitted, and I think I said it myself, like Mega Sharpedo last week had such a field day against their Team Cyberbaz, but they didn't even bring it, which made me think this week is a bit more skeptical. Is like, will they be able to make the right calls against Team Jamie's team, where they have an extra head team building, and as they said, they have the most teamy team, where it actually looks like a legit team. So I feel like this is one of the harder teams to build for, because they don't have to rely on sand. They've shown good initiative and switching and just leading well to put themselves in the best place possible, which I think is more so their play style, where they just lead correctly.
Yeah, and like if you look at the team, even if they don't lead correctly, they have so many options. Obviously, I mean, as always, sand is especially attractive whenever you can enable a Pokemon like Excadrill, which is going to resist psychic types, but also hit, Tapu Lele for super effective damage with an Iron Head. It can have Mold Breaker so that it can hit Rotom through Levitate for 4 times super effective damage. It's going to hit Steelix, Electivire. Iron Head will also hit Togetic and Kiroam. Deoxys is super frail, so it's not really taking much of anything. And then, sure, you could say, well, if they're going to run Sand Rush Excadrill, or even just a fast Excadrill, we'll just run Trick Room like they tried to do last week. But then that'll almost always be paired, at least to start, with that Tyranitar, and that's going to be able to do a lot of damage with stab dark type attacks onto that Oranguru, and at the same time onto Deoxys, and it's going to be able to use Rock Slide to hit Rotom and all kinds of things. I just think that in terms of speed, great coverage, but then you also have Pokemon like Mega Blastoise, which is going to be able to hit the ground type Pokemon on their teams. You even have Yamega, which if you give it a turn to speed boost, is I'm almost certain going to be outspeeding Deoxys, and then it can be bug buzzing and hitting the psychic types for super effective damage, and maybe not a whole lot else, but still.
Can hit Sharpedo with obviously Bug Buzz as well, because that's super effective. It gets Giga Drain, so you can, obviously it's not probably going to do much, but you can still do a decent chunk to a Hippowdon. So it's easy to make arguments for everything else, and you get stuff like Air Cutter, so you can still hit stuff neutrally, but we don't know what else they can do. Superior, I can see doing a lot of work here, strangely enough, as well.
Yeah, I think Superior does have a couple Pokemon that it really hits well, like the Hippowdon and the Mega Sharpedo, but I think that Rotom would be a problem for it unless you ran Hidden Power Rock, which I guess I feel like is actually fairly common. Togetic kind of gives it some problems. I originally thought Superior, but I kind of compared it to Mega Blastoise and thought, all right, they would probably bring one or the other. I think more sense, in my opinion.
Well, just after a Leaf Storm, you're going to have Sky High special attack anyway, so it doesn't really matter.
And it is fast, and that certainly will help, because I do think that they're going to either have to be really fast or really slow in this game. Another Pokemon that I think would be really good in this matchup from Team Jamie is the Porygon Z. I could see a Z conversion maybe to Dark going pretty well, because it does still get those other moves that do still get boosted, even though it's not Stab. It will still do a lot with like an Ice Beam or a Thunderbolt, in addition to Dark Pulse doing a lot to Deoxys, Oranguru, and even Tapu Lele, despite the fact that it takes it neutrally.
With our next match, we've got Team Leaky versus Disney. So everyone chose We Disney except from me.
Why?
Why?
I mean, not why. Why did we all pick We Disney except for you? Why did you pick Leaky and not Team Disney?
When I originally did my picks, like behind the scenes, I did my picks on the Saturday after the battles, and I saw how tilted Duncan was. He's a lot better now, so I would have probably chosen like Team We Disney if I did it Monday or Tuesday like I normally do. But I saw it then, and I saw how tilted, and I take being tilted on a lot. Like, I think about that a lot. So if you're tilted, I think maybe you won't perform as well because you're a bit angry. I still like their matchup. They haven't brought Beedrill yet. Beedrill is perfect for this team.
Yeah, it does really well against the Tapus, and with U-turn being able to out.
Yeah, it deals really well with the Tapus. Necrozma can have a lot of fun here, obviously with it having the Prism armor, no weaknesses, so it can absorb a lot of hits. Maybe we see a more supportive Necrozma this time instead of just relying on getting the boost or just using it as a nuke answer with a Z Crystal, just using it as support, sitting there in the back, maybe being a bit bulky, being a bit more passive, and then obviously you have the redirection which they can go either way with, which one they think would be a bit better. Personally myself, I can see Magmar coming because obviously Landorus is going to deal with either of them anyway with Earth Power, but Magmar is a bit better all around against the things like Frostlass, the Tapus, and the Silvally. But obviously Silvally can be any type, so it's hard to predict. Rotom Frost and their whole actual Blizzard mode really does really well here. Obviously we say this every week against Team We Disney that they're really weak to ice moves, but this week with actually having the proper support for an ice mode, I feel like that can do well, and we've seen how deadly they can use Amber Pom, which can just be a general annoyance to everything on the field.
And I think you did just hit on the key to Team Leaky's potential victory in this match, which in my opinion is the fact that Necrozma doesn't have anything that it really has to be afraid of. I don't think Frostlass really counts in terms of threatening super effective attackers. So Volley Ghost or Dark might be a problem, but I'm not too worried about that. And so I think Necrozma has a really easy time setting up Trick Room, especially if like they run something with a Mental Herb. That way it can't be taunted. I don't know how heavy it is, so I don't know if it can be picked up with Skydrop, but most legends can't. And so I think they have a really easy time setting up Trick Room, and then I think having something like Obama Snow, and then possibly even Rotom after that to just spam Blizzard and deal with everything that isn't named Magmar. Really good option, because then you have Necrozma, which despite the fact that it is bulky, does still have a lot of potential power and can chunk, you know, maybe not, it's not getting a one-hit KO, but it could get a two-hit KO on either the Lantern or the Magmortar, and I think that that's their answer. But despite that being the case, I just think Team Disney has too much offense and too many answers. Their team is really good. Duncan and Shofu, aside from maybe last week and that minor tilt, they were playing really good. And I mean, like, I was so impressed with them busting out Special Tapu Bulu. I was judging them so hard when I was watching that game. I was like, what are you guys doing? But then it worked. And so I think, as smart as I think I am, they clearly know what they're doing with this team. And while Leaky does have, you know, I think that very safe way to set up and kind of use Trick Room to power through Team We Disney will have something to stop that in its tracks that maybe we didn't expect, or maybe, you know, we might expect it, but it won't matter because it'll just be not a sure thing, but too hard to stop.
Yeah, exactly. So do we have another match? We don't. It's the end now. So obviously here's the end slide for the match preview and pick'ems, just in case if you skipped over or if you want to see and recap what we did. But aside from that, I don't think we have much else to say. Any last words, Jason?
Just these week's matches, and thanks for watching as always, guys and girls.
Thank you very much, and we will see you again this time next week. Bye-bye.